comedian Robert Klein speaking with Dave Lefkowitz on Dave's Gone By on UNC Radio.
Welcome back to Dave's Gone By, and I am incredibly proud and honored to be talking to our guest today. He is, and I do not say this lightly, and I do not even exaggerate, he is a living legend of comedy. And I mean comedy in so many different formats. I'm talking stand-up comedy, record albums. He was on Broadway in a few shows, including They're Playing Our Song and The Sisters Rosenzweig. You've seen him on TV in Sisters, and he was playing Deborah Messing's father in The Mysteries of Laura. He was the voice of Uncle Mo in Duckman, for gosh sakes, and he played the mayor of New York in Sharknado 3. Jerry Seinfeld has called this man the Beatles of comedy when Seinfeld was coming through as a comedian himself. I'm talking about two-time Grammy nominee and, as I said, living legend, Robert Klein. Robert Klein, welcome to the Daverhood.
What a nice interview. Thanks a lot, Dave. You left out, of course, the 40 movies,
All right.
and Tony nomination, and the two Grammy nominations. I have two Grammys.
Oh, no, I mentioned the Grammy nominations. I did.
Only nominations.
Oh, well, but...
like theater critics, L.A. theater critics, and the New York theater critics. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be with you without the altitude.
Oh, well, yeah, you're all the way down there in sort of upstate New York-ish, and we're here in Colorado. But I did get to see you in The Sisters Rosenzweig. I thought you were terrific.
That was a wonderful play. Wendy Wasserstein, the late, she was a gentle genius, one of the... but certainly, I maybe the finest quality play I was ever in, except maybe for The Merchant of Venice. But
wait, when and where were you in The Merchant of Venice?
At college.
Were you Shylock? I mean, I guess it's kind of racist to assume, but were you Shylock?
Oh, I was. In fact, before a largely anti-Semitic audience. Act 3, hath not a Jew eyes, hath not a Jew hands, senses, organs, dimensions, passions. They went, no! They started to chase me around the campus, German shepherds. Nightmare.
Oh, my goodness, my God. Yeah.
Summer stock version of Romeo and Juliet, I was Benvolio, a rather unimportant cousin of Romeo's. But that was with professional, I was a student at the Yale Drama School, and my professor, Nico Sakaropoulos, gave me a summer job working with all these professional actors, and I learned a lot that summer.
Well, that's the thing. You had sort of a bifurcated career because you were pretty high up in terms of being a stand-up comedian, and yet you, unlike some of the others, really jumped more into film and TV and that side of it, rather than sticking, as Carlin did and some of those others, with stand-up.
Yeah, well, George, was in a few movies, and he had a television series, but basically he was strictly that. I love stand-up, and it's how I made my bones, and I have the most independence. I write my own stuff, so I can change lines if I want. I can't change Wendy Wasserstein's or Neil Simon's or, any of the great playwrights that I've done plays for. But still, I wanted to work, and also I wanted to keep interested, and I think versatility has done both for me. If I had to wait around for the next part all the time, or just tour the country being a comedian, I don't think it would have been nearly as interesting. So that doing lots of things kept me working and kept me interested.
No, I think it's fabulous. It's just for listeners, it's a shame that over the length of your career you have maybe 4 or 5 albums, record albums, as opposed to some of these other folks who would put out an album every other year.
Well, albums are sort of gone now, but I did 4 of them, and 2 of them were nominated for Grammys, Child of the 50s and Mind Over Matter. Mind Over Matter in 1974 was a big inspiration to guys like Jon Stewart and Leno and Jerry. I did a lot of Watergate stuff. And Leno said in this documentary film about me, Robert Klein Still Can't Stop His Leg is the name of it. And truth be known, it was produced by the Weinstein Company.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask about that. I mean, the film
He
came
never
out
made
last
a pass
year.
at me.
No, I know.
It's only a case of he said, she 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 said. What a believe. But anyway, Leno had a cute thing. He said, when you live in rural Massachusetts and you want to go into comedy, people commiserate with your mother. You know, is Jay still interested in that comedy thing? You know? And he said, you could point to Robert Klein. There's a normal guy who went to college and he's a comedian, you know.
Well, that was the thing. I was watching an interview that Jim Norton did with you on his SiriusXM show, and he was talking about how your poster would be on the walls of dorms, as opposed to like these hot girls undressed. It would be a picture of you, so that they could point to that and say, "Hey, here's a guy who went to college, clean cut, and he's doing, you know, he's making his living doing comedy. So can I, you know."
Yeah, that was. I mean, you know, I guess my career has spanned long enough so that there were a number of innovations. At the very last Tonight Show that Jay Leno hosted, he had Billy Crystal on, and Billy said, you know, all the comedians used to flop in your dump apartment in Boston when we were on the road, you know, and they were all struggling, and he said, you had no furniture. I remember you had one thing on the wall, the Child of the 50s Robert Klein poster. I could never figure he had it on his wall. Yeah, I mean, everything has changed. I mean, I wasn't the first comedian to break the mold of, you know, tuxedo and cufflinks. Certainly you could go back to Lord Buckley, you know, who referred to Jesus as the Naz. He was kind of, you know, a jazz guy, and it wasn't joke after joke, but he was a monologist who was funny and very different. And even, you know, Newhart and Shelley Berman, who was on the phone, or Woody Allen, or
Nichols and May, those kinds of...
Cosby, for that matter, had broken the mold of, well, yeah, I guess Cosby too in that sense. But I think what happened is that, you know, a new generation, I wanted to talk about things. Lenny Bruce and Jonathan Winters were my two biggest inspirations, even though they were very disparate types of comedians. They also knew each other, by the way, and were fans. Jonathan was completely... I spoke at his memorial a couple of years ago. I absolutely adored him, his work, and had the privilege of meeting him a few times and corresponding with him. He was apolitical, but he was incredibly improvisational, which I have always been from my Second City training. And he was a one-man show with the noises, with the theatrics, with not just standing in front of a mic. You know, I just did a show in Toronto, New Year's Eve, and they were all funny. These 8 Canadian comedians. It's hard to say that. But they all stood in front of the mic, with maybe one exception. They didn't even rove the stage. And they had good material, but, you know, there was a style. Now, Lenny Bruce pushed the envelope, and if you listen to his material now, for which he was arrested several times and could not get booked, he had no champions except Marty Garbus, the First Amendment lawyer, who I see occasionally here in New York. He not only did voices and was a one-man show, but he wanted to be socially relevant. And, you know, now it would appear tepidly offensive to anybody who would be offended by it. It was really intelligent. But that combination, to me, I wanted to make stand-up something a little more special than just telling jokes, you know, about your wife or your girlfriend, you know, kind of letting it hang out a bit. And, of course, George Carlin and I were contemporaries and prior.
Right.
And but George was in show business before I was. So was Richard. George was, you know, after he left high school, after a year or two, Cardinal Hayes High School in the Bronx, he was what Rodney Dangerfield used to call a rounder. I mean, this guy got around. He joined the Air Force, left the Air Force. He was a disc jockey in Louisiana. I came from a middle-class Jewish home in New York. I went to college. I went to graduate school. And I found my true calling. But I just wanted to make it, change it somewhat, and not be afraid to apply intelligence to the material, not just go to the lowest common denominator. You don't have to be I always felt you didn't have to be a great intellectual to understand my stuff. I think I could make kids laugh, too. I like, so-called low humor. I love climbing on the piano and silliness, but I just wanted to do it on my own terms. And I think, by and large, I did it.
Well, let me ask, because as someone who does comedy and writes comedy myself and does plays and things like that, is it harder or easier now that everything is okay to talk about and language is totally okay? It's like every time I think of doing some sick skit or something like that, South Park did it 4 years ago. Was it easier back in the 1970s to sort of, if I say this, some people in the audience will be a little offended, but boy, oh boy, I can talk about this, maybe?
Well, first of all, I never wanted to make the audience uncomfortable. I wanted to make them laugh. You do what I did the first HBO special ever, first of 9, and I could say fuck, and I could say shit, and I said each of them once just as a rib, because it was revolutionary to be on a television screen and saying such things. I think the new license is a very mixed bag. I'm very happy that there's not the kind of incredibly heavy censorship I had to go through. I mean, in my 80 Tonight Show appearances with Johnny Carson, that includes about a dozen guest hosts, I guess, every word was parsed. I spent many times in the hallway with Freddie DeCordova, the producer. He was calling the legals in NBC New York to find out if it's okay to say this or that. I'm glad there aren't these, when Lenny Bruce was tormented and arrested all the time, someone told me he was making a joke about the Pope at the Happy Medium in Chicago, and the detectives went up and arrested him, So I'm glad that's no longer there. On the other hand, I think it went so far the other way that it's just kind of, those words still connote shock and this and that. When profanity is used aptly, like a good novelist would use it, I would never fault E.L. Doctorow for using a profane word in one of his bits. It depends if it's appropriate, but you can do anything, say anything, any bodily function. And also something that does annoy me a bit, and that is the use of profanity gratuitously, like, all these Canadian comedians up there, and this is true of the American ones too, though, I went to the fucking dentist, dentist, and use the other word.
Yeah, no, I just hate those fucking Canadians, I do.
Louis C.K., my fucking kids, it's just, the language is so rich, the English language, and I always appreciate anyone using it, but I mean, I have stuff about that. I mean, America certainly has dumbed down tremendously since I started. I have no doubt of it. I mean, no one even knows how the government works. Civics isn't taught. Cursive writing isn't taught. If I see one more person on television, I don't particularly like to think I was descended from an ape. Now, I think it's the ape that has issues with this son of a bitch. I mean, yes, the Earth is only 7,000 years old. But,
I think it's 8,000.
Men and dinosaurs lived and worked together until 1969 when the Flintstones was canceled, Really, it's sad, and the result is the current presidential administration, a general kind of dumbing down of things. We're still arguing about evolution in 2018.
Well, evolution is just a theory. Is a theory most scientists believe, but they really still haven't proved it.
Well, so is relativity, and it's unfortunate they call it the theory of, because I mean, how much proof do you need that what Darwin said is true. And of course, these same people who believe that there's only one. I mean, I thought what's his name, Spencer Tracy, settled this in Inherit the Wind.
The Wind, yeah.
50 years ago. I mean, the Bible is an interesting book. It's an inspirational book to many, but it's not scientific truth. These same people put a piece of metal in their car ignition and take off in an automobile that was invented by people who think. It wasn't like hocus pocus. There it is. Faith is a complicated thing, but it's not meant for intelligent people to take nonsense literally. There's myth and it's inspirational myth.
Well, let me ask you, speaking of myth and stuff like that, I'll ask you a question that Rabbi Saul Solomon would have asked if he were doing this interview. But where are you on the faith line in terms of Judaism? You're obviously raised, I guess, conservative Jewish, middle class, but do you have any faith? Do you celebrate any holidays? What do you believe?
I do not work on Yom Kippur. That's what I believe. I think...
Do you eat?
Idea for a day. I just won't. I worked inadvertently at Chicago at Second City at 65 on Yom Kippur, and the next morning I had a tremendous pus wart. And I know that was a message. My parents, actually my ancestors, very unusual story, they came over on the Mayflower. They had the buckled shoe concession. They were merchants, and pilgrims went for these buckled shoes on their belts, on their hats, on their schmeckles. Everything had a buckle. Could have opened another line, but there were no other ships.
Actually, take off the belt buckles, and they look like chassids. So it is almost,
They look like what?
And they look like chassids. See, that was a joke there. I tried to throw in a joke. I should leave you to do because they're all in black, and they have hats, and they've got...
I didn't hear it because I'm old.
I know.
No, all four of my grandparents came from Hungary in 1903.
Wow.
A very fortunate move. I was born on February 8th, 1942, when Jews in Europe, they hadn't gotten to the Hungarians quite yet. They were being hoarded into death camps. So people talk about how terrible the world is today. You go back to then when England stood alone and even when the United States entered the war, the Nazis had all of Europe, the Japanese had all of Asia. I had a bar mitzvah because when my parents did not celebrate. My father's mother, I knew none of my grandparents. They all died except one when I was 2 or 3, and I don't remember him. My father's mother kept a kosher home. When she died, he was 16, and he got very angry at God, and he certainly lost his religion then, and he never went to synagogue except, for someone's bar mitzvah. I took bar mitzvah lessons for 2 years, once a week with 2 other friends. I'd be playing stickball in the street in the Bronx, and I'd see his black Kaiser Frazer, the ugliest car ever made, coming up the block, and I knew I had to go up there for this drudgery because I was curious. When we were studying the Bible, I said, Rabbi Meyerov, he wasn't really a rabbi, but he let us call him that. An old guy said, did he really part the Red Sea? And he said, turn the page. That was the extent of the curiosity. So I really have come to grips with the fact and feel good about the fact. I guess I have spirituality because Albert Einstein found the more he delved into these wonders of the universe, the more he felt that some sort of belief in God. But I guess I'm more of a deist, like many of the founding fathers were. A God or something created all this and then left it to us. There is no one there pulling strings and giving you this and that, so that there's no use being hypocritical about it. And what's her name? That psychologist Ross was the middle of a name. She interviewed 650 dying people, and she found that atheists...
Oh, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, yeah.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, thank you. And I'm not quite an atheist, but she said atheists, she found, had just as peaceful a death. However, someone like Johann Sebastian Bach, who I kind of idolize, certainly his music, his lifetime of devotion must have helped him in a very painful death. He was blind. They tried to operate on his eyes, which didn't do any good in the 18th century. So, my ex-mother-in-law, who was a pretty religious woman, and that's when it pays off, I guess. You feel you're going to a better place. If we could convince these idiots who blow up things thinking they're going to get 70 virgins and be honored in heaven that it's bullshit, we could save ourselves a lot of fatalities. But, first of all, who wants 70 virgins? They'll be calling their mother.
I'd settle for 63 virgins. I couldn't handle 70, but 63.
70 is a little over the top.
Yeah, just a bit.
Look, it is true that religion gives a moral compass of some sort. The idea that the monks saved a lot of the written word in the Dark Ages and all that, but you got to say religion has been a very mixed bag. Just about every single conflagration in the world right now is over religion, which was not true in World War II. That wasn't religion. That was, ideology. But, the Irish, who look exactly alike, North and South, they'll hate each other. The Jews and the Palestinians, Arabs, are all Semites. Pakistan and India, the incredible abuse of the Rohingya, whatever you call them, in Myanmar. We think of Buddhists as peaceful, and these Buddhist monks, they have Buddhist monks there. They were murderers. They're telling people to rape and pillage. Why? Because the other guy's religion is different. And obviously ISIS and these idiots who are 10th century, they're all foul, ignorant people.
And not even...
Own individual, there is absolutely no virtue to what they do, whatever. God didn't intend to torture babies and stuff like that. So, as far as religion is concerned, the Holocaust, which I heard about all my life, has been a very important factor in my life, and fighting anti-Semitism, which will always be around. For what reason, I can't say. But
have you experienced it as an adult? I'm sure as a kid, other kids made fun, poked fun, etc. in DeWitt Clinton High School. But what about as a performer, as a grown person, or even in recent years? Have you experienced it personally?
No.
Oh, cool.
Not in recent years. I talk about it all the time, just the way Pryor talked about black experience in America. I experienced it big time in college, which is why I can't forgive.
Oh, Yale.
Oh, yeah, not at Yale. That was graduate school, but a small school in Western New York called Alfred University, which was in a very rural part of the state and was an excellent liberal arts college. I had gone for pre-med, and there was no social life. There was no alcohol in the town or for 15 miles around. It was a Seventh-day Baptist village, very strict rules. So there were 6 fraternities, and 4 of them were white Christian only and could only take a certain amount of new members, and I was left out for the first year, and it was humiliating, and I never forgot it. And that is where I played Shylock in The Merchant of Venice.
Oh, man.
Presidents of the college and subsequent big shots from the school have asked me to please join them in trying to raise money or this and that, and please stop saying bad things about it. Because I did the bit on Saturday Night Live on my first or second host, I don't remember, either the first year, 5th show, or the 3rd year. I used to mention the college by name when I did that bit about the anti-Semitism, and a lot more material about that. And now I don't mention the school anymore because certainly it's changed over the years, but still, I don't care. They allowed that to go on for years, and it was very hurtful. I did get some hate mail in my career. I used to make little comments on Tonight Show here and there, and I got, hey, Jew boy, blah, 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 and whatever. But no, I think, as a matter of fact, as a race, I think Jewish people, and certainly in the United States, have achieved a certain kind of parity. It was almost, no one even mentioned
Joe Lieberman. Even that was years before then. It was, and he was a Sabbath observing Jew, and they kind of brought it up, but it was never in a negative way, you know.
That was a few years ago. Now, it's even less so. I mean, ideology counts more. In fact, it is a mystery to me how so many Jews at high levels in presidential advisors, when the president has shown this such bigotry, this Steve Cohn and these others, I guess they're looking to get a tax deal and then get out or something, but the Steve Mnuchin is an embarrassment to Jews. Seriously,
well, there are people who still hate Henry Kissinger.
He's an embarrassment, okay? He happens to be a Jew. But, I shouldn't say it's an embarrassment to the Jews. He happens to be a Jew. But you know how it is. I remember when the Rosenbergs were accused of espionage and eventually executed. Julius Rosenberg was, without a doubt, a Soviet agent, and he wasn't even getting paid. He did it for ideological reasons. His wife was completely innocent. She was slaughtered for nothing. But I remember my parents having that kind of shtetl fear, that there might be some, blowback, anti-Semitism. Like when Madoff, I have done investigating, and I found out Madoff, not Jewish, Lutheran. You thought he was Jewish, right? Lefkowitz, son of Sam, Episcopalian, not Jewish.
He was actually, he really was. He was raised, either raised by a Jewish family and he ended up converting to Christianity or something like that.
He was Jewish, Roman Catholic.
Okay.
Roman Catholic. Sully Sullenberger landed that plane in the Hudson? Jewish. The family in Boston, the herring merchants, Shmuel and Itzhak Sullenberger. He had the most delicious matches herring in America. Very observant, will not allow their children to watch Porky Pig. That is observant. And Porky is a very enigmatic character because he has no pants and no genitals, and that's why he stutters.
But he was voiced by Mel Blanc, so that's kind of, Mel Blanc was Jewish, I believe. So
he was wonderful.
Yeah.
So who's the new Mel Blanc? My favorite, this kid, Seth MacFarlane.
Oh, well, genius. Yeah.
Family Guy is the best thing on television. That's what I think.
It is, for me, the funniest TV show of all time. I love The Simpsons. That was genius, too. But for out-and-out, minute-by-minute, laugh out loud, nothing has compared. I loved Monty Python. I loved The Odd Couple. Family Guy, absolutely genius. What else do you watch? What do you like to watch on TV, Robert Klein?
I watch a lot of Hitler. AHC, my friend Henry Schleif, an old friend from HBO, he runs that network, the AHC network, Heroes channel, and he runs a few others. And he gets this gorgeous subject matter from Canadian and British sources, a lot of World War II stuff. I love documentaries. I love, draining the ocean, what it would look like, the Atlantic Ocean. For years, I don't watch prime time. The dumbest thing I watch is a lot of sports. I watch a lot of the Yankees, a lot of the Knicks,
Right.
New York football this year was a mess, so was Denver football for that matter.
Right.
But I am a television addict, there is no doubt. I have an incredible setup, a huge Sony screen, and sound, and even more than movies. I like old movies more. I love to watch my collection of W.C. Fields, the Marx Brothers, Chaplin, Laurel and Hardy. And my son is 34 years old. He tried to tell me about Family Guy years ago, and it was an animation. I felt like I'm a grown-up. Even I was on that Duck show with Jason Alexander.
Oh, Duckman was great. I love Duckman.
And then I took a look at the first season. He had it on, and I just got hooked. And their 300th episode is coming up. So I haven't duplicated it even yet. They're on every night. I tape them, DVD, and watch them. I got to write this kid a letter because sometimes they go over the top. There was a couple of Anne Frank references I wasn't crazy about, or maybe some other kind of cruelty that had nothing to do with Jews. But you know what? They nail everyone. I mean, they had a bit.
Yeah.
These cutaways. It's really like stand-up comedy because, when I say, yeah, it's like in my blah, 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 I'll say, like when and I'll go into a sidetrack thing. Well, they do that all the time. They say, he says, well, I haven't felt like this since that time boom, right. And they go into a cutaway. And they had one with Henry Ford, who just invented the car. And the people said, gee, what is it? He said, it's a Jew-crushing machine. A Jew-crushing machine. What? A Jew-crushing, that's what it is. Well, can you go anywhere in it? Can you go to from point A to point B? There you go, ruining it. No, it's a Jew. Now, Henry Ford's anti-Semitism was virulent.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a newspaper out, and of course he's considered in the American mentality one of our geniuses. By the way, Edison was touched by that too, and was not altogether fair in the contest between he and Tesla.
Yeah.
Despite Mickey Rooney and Spencer Tracy playing him in the movies as some gentle genius.
Well, Edison took credit for a lot of things that other people did. I didn't know he was anti-Semitic, though.
He was a bit. I read a couple of letters where he wasn't anywhere in the neighborhood with Ford, but they were very, very close friends. And part of that is just, even Eleanor Roosevelt, there's a quote when she was a debutante. Well, there were a few too many Jews at the party, whatever. And, it was fashionable. That's how far we've come. By the way, I saw an email from somebody that was passed around, someone from Milwaukee who lives in Munich, in Germany, and he hears anti-Semitic jokes all the time. They're, jokes. They're not like, let's gas them or kill them or filled with hate. It's just jokes that used to be fashionable in offices in America maybe 40 years ago. And why are they hearing them now? Because there are no Jews. They won't be offending anybody, because in truth, the Germans have done a tremendous amount of thinking and really paying back. Israel is full of Mercedes, and they have been very close and all that. The Japanese, on the other hand, are still hypocrites, refusing to acknowledge the terrible damage they did to civilians in the Pacific, particularly China. And by the way, just as an addendum to the Henry Ford thing, after the Second World War, the Ford sons made very strenuous overtures to the Jewish communities around this country, especially New York, the cab drivers and stuff, so they would buy Ford products because Jews boycotted Ford products. So, we're in a better situation here than we ever have been, really. But, it just doesn't go away. These morons, in Charlottesville marching, there is this myth somehow that we control the world and all that. And, of course, we're not even of one thought. I just got an invitation to join AIPAC, the last thing in the world I would ever do. They support this lousy. I'm all for Israel, all against the government there. This administration. They make me ashamed. They're racist. They're full of hate, and the Palestinians are the smartest and best educated and have most potential of any of the Arabs. What a fiscal kind of industrial powerhouse cooperation between Palestinians and Israelis could be. Those kids in Palestine, they need a job, and they won't be pulling anyone up.
Well, oh boy, I almost want to go into Rabbi Sal Solomon mode at the moment because it's a touchy subject for me. It's kind of like I'm all for the Palestinians having jobs and careers and etc. But why do they have to have a piece of Israel? They can live so many other places in the Middle East. They don't need to be on the tiny little piece of land that is a Jewish homeland.
Agreed, and so did the world, except for the Arab countries. But they attacked us 3 or 4 times. See, that's another thing. People don't know their history. They don't know World War I. They don't know World War II. They don't know how helpless Israel was at the beginning, and how even Walter Cronkite was ebullient when they won another, and back to Israel again, and throw them into the sea. And until they, agree, they've had some opportunities, but it's not helping now. I mean, Netanyahu is just, when who was assassinated? Rabin. When Rabin was assassinated, I remember meeting him in Israel. He spoke to our group. What a serious man with the weight of the world on his shoulders. An excellent soldier, but a very pragmatic man of peace. When he was assassinated, I think everything went out the window. That's what I feel. And there are certain cooler heads, but now there are settlers in Israel. I mean, there's not as many. We don't have Sesame Street characters in Israel saying about killing Palestinians like they do on television, stuff like that. I mean, that's, and also the phony, what is it, the Protocols of Zion.
Oh, yeah.
That...
the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, yeah. No, but I'm just saying, when you're defending Palestinians in a certain level, I'm saying if they are, I think they're asking too much of Israel in a certain sense. Like, Israel is just this thimble-sized country compared to, the size of the rest of the Middle East and the Arab Middle East and North Africa. We can live perfectly in peace with the Palestinians if they just move there. And I'm not being funny, I'm saying it.
Where?
Anywhere. Lebanon, Syria.
Why?
Iraq,
Iran.
Iran.
What are you talking about? They're there for generations. Why should they move?
Well, they're not there for
divided up into two countries, and that's the way it was supposed to be, but they wouldn't accept that rule.
Right.
I mean, the world, except for them, said this is going to be divided. They shouldn't have run, that's for sure. They were told to run for their lives. The Arabs still living in Israel are pretty secure, somewhat wealthy. They live in a Jewish state, which maybe doesn't suit them, that's for sure.
But they can move.
Why would you tell someone they have to move somewhere where they're born for generations?
Well, again, they're not there necessarily for...
They're Palestinians. They've been living there for thousands of years, like the Jews were, some of the Jews, before the diaspora, and, apparently for hundreds of years before Israel. There's always been Zionists there, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just saying they don't have to carve up a tiny little place that is meant for Jews if the Palestinians feel that they absolutely have to live right there. I mean, the Jews, when it got uncomfortable for them in places, they moved.
Wait a minute. They lived there. They were there. They didn't come from somewhere else.
They were all over the desert. They did come from other places. They're Bedouins. Some of them lived there, some of them didn't.
Oh, but many of them did, and you're asking them that did to just pick up and leave and give it to, as it is a tiny, thin...
Yes.
And it should never go back to the exact 67 borders, which were indefensible. That's true, but, and driving Israelis into the sea and that whole thing is ridiculous, and also a source of constant fighting. But you can't ask people to leave their own homes.
Look at it this way. We live, my wife and I live in Greeley, Colorado, and she's really worried about the fracking, right? We have friends who are very anti-fracking, and it's constant here. I don't mind it. She worries about the health effects and all that. So if we don't we eventually might want to move to another place where fracking is banned. Our decision. So, I'm saying that the Palestinians, if they feel disrespected in Israel, it's like find an Arab country and go. They should have a million choices. It's just that the other Arab countries won't let them in.
You're saying in Israel. That's not the problem. You're talking about people living in the Palestinian
section of Israel.
What?
That's what we're talking about. That is still
Palestine. It's Palestine.
It's not. It's Israel. Sorry. It is. It's all that.
All of it. With all these Palestinians, they should all go. I mean,
to Lebanon, to Syria, Chad, Qatar.
Don't you? Come on. They're all hypocrites anyway. There are more Muslims killing their own. Nobody is. They've dumped the Palestinians pretty much. The country's not going to take them. And you're talking about like when they were talking about repatriating slaves to Africa. These are people who have lived generations, hundreds of years in that land. You can't ask them to leave. Let them stay in peace.
Yeah, if it would be peaceful, for sure.
Make a deal.
Oh, yeah, good luck. We've been trying for
These
70
guys, man, I'm telling you, with these militant settlers, I even know one. An old friend of mine became one of them. They're racist. Some of them, they just have visceral hatred like the other side is animals, and that's never going to accomplish anything.
Well, you know how it also goes is like if some bad thing happens to someone, and the person who did that bad thing happens to be of a particular race or sex or creed or something, then it's sort of like, oh, they're all horrible, and that kind of happens too, unfortunately, you know.
It does happen. I mean, of all people, we have been victimized worse than any race in the history of the world, one could say, certainly the modern world. We, of all people, should know about dislocation and all the rest. And there was a serious problem that the British saw happening after the Ottoman Empire lost the First World War. That, and not only that, the Mufti of Jerusalem was a pal of Hitler's. I mean, they were all for the extermination. But those days are gone, and Israel was declared a state alongside the state of Palestine. They attacked them 3 times. They lost, and now they're begging for something that they couldn't win on the battlefield. But there is a middle ground in which there's a strong Israel, a not very strong Palestine, but a peaceful one.
We should live so long.
People have been there for generations to get up and go to some other Arab country. The whole culture is different, and that's resettlement. That's ethnic cleansing. That's not right.
It's not really ethnic. They would be going. I mean, it would be different if the Arab world were as small as the Jewish homeland. If like there was another country side by side that was only a few thousand acres or something, but they've got like millions and millions of miles.
Different countries
where Jews can't
go.
Go.
They're different everything.
Yeah, but it's not as if Jews could go resettle in Iran.
Yeah, that's true. And when they talk about that, what are they doing there? Oh, they were thrown out of all those Arab countries, the Jews, or so badly persecuted that they had to leave. Now, there's no doubt that the Jews have an excellent case, but the case seems to be with this kind of government in Netanyahu is not made well for the rest of the world. Having Trump as your only friend in the world is not a good deal. Yes, Israelis are getting around. They have a fantastic aviation, arms industry, pharmaceutical industry. Every day I take a Prilosec made by Tev Pharmacy, Tiva, whatever it is.
And they make falafel and Manischewitz. I mean, there's things. We're rising.
There's a big disparity in wealth in Israel too. When I see a thing, help the poor people in Israel. No, let rich people help the poor people in Israel. There's enough poor people here.
Well, those are Christian people trying to get to heaven.
Yeah, that's the kind of friends we have. These born-agains who really want to convert us. Yeah. That's the biggest fans now, and that's when you have so many American Jews like myself. I'm completely supportive of. Israel to me means a lot, but that doesn't mean that government is something I have to like. It's ugly. It's ugly to me. It really is.
Okay. We agree to disagree, honestly. And you're certainly well spoken about it. And I wish I had Alan Dershowitz's book in front of me so I could quote chapter and verse and say, "Well, no, you're wrong," and they weren't there.
Set up with him too. He's trying to justify that the president can pardon himself. I don't know where he is. He went over the
Yeah, a bit. But he's right on his. Read Alan Dershowitz's book on Israel, and then maybe you'll come around, or maybe not. That's totally.
No way that I want Israel to be thrown into the sea.
I know. Yeah.
And not be strong and be the strongest country in the Middle East and survive and thrive. No way. But this is asking people who have been living for tens and hundreds of generations in a place to leave because the Bible says that's yours. No. And who wrote the Bible, too? We're talking about doubting the Bible in other ways.
That's
true in the Bible. I just read the other day. No. One-state solution some Israeli right-winger said, the biblical land, that's the Bible gave it to us. So he sounds like one of these born-agains of the Bible. Everything is the Bible. That's, it's reality. And I'll tell you the truth. Israel, during that war in Gaza, they called up and said, we're going to bomb that building. Get the hell out of there.
They did.
Knocked on it. I mean, they always get bad PR when the rest of the world is killing themselves. There's no doubt. The world loves to pour it on Israel. But they invite it when they have a government like they have now.
Okay. So, well, by the way,
what else can we talk about?
We're talking about to the hilarious Robert Klein. We got so serious for like 20 minutes. Oh, man. Well...
If anyone's listening in Long Island, I'm going to be in Patchogue. When?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to mention. Yeah, right. He's good. You go see him at the Patchogue Theater this coming Friday night, January 12th. So absolutely go see this legend. Do you promise not to talk about Israel?
I'm going to talk about Patchogue.
Oh, yeah. Well, what do you...
I mean, anybody who's observant won't be coming. It's on a Friday night, but...
Yeah.
Catch anyone with payas in there, I'm going to tell on them.
Hey, let me ask you, your son is a comedian too. Do you see your traits and influence in his comic style and the stuff he deals with?
A little bit. He's been trying to be very independent. I also have reminded him that, like me, he'd be wise. He's studying acting at the Uta Hagen Herbert Berghoff studio. That's important. He's a great-looking guy. I think he has acting talent. To make sure that he puts himself forth as an actor too, so he can go up and read a script and get a job doing comedy or dramatic stuff. He's really kept me at arm's distance for the most part on that. Interestingly enough, as if he also decided to do it only 3 years ago. After he left the University of Vermont, he worked for Bobby Kennedy's Waterkeeper Alliance, a nonprofit, for 8 or 9 years. Mm-hmm. And pretty frustrating work. Trying, he'd organize for a river keeper in China to be in charge of a certain river, and then the guy would disappear because China, if you complain about polluted water, and shut you up. I think he wants to be independent of me, but he is. He's a riffer. He's sort of a jazz kind of. He's a very good improviser, and he's working on it. His name is Ali Klein. His name is Alexander, but we call him Ali, A-L-L-I-E, not A-L-I.
And you're actually on a bill he's on a bill with you at some event. It's not the Patchogue one, but you're out there with a bunch of other comedians.
A benefit for the second year in a row we did it together, for the retinitis pigmentosa.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
At the Gotham Comedy Club in New York. He did a very nice set, and I was very proud to watch him. It's fun, but he's an independent guy, and show business has a very an aspect of meritocracy to it. No matter who your father is, or even who you slept with, if you're not good, if you don't have it, it's hard for you to have a career in that.
Oh, yeah. But you're saying your son has it.
I think he has it, but he has to have the heart. Having the talent is a very important aspect. It should be 99% of it, but it isn't. You need chutzpah, and you need tenacity and the heart to do it. You have to really want it. And that remains to be seen, how much he wants it, how much he's willing. He seems to be doing, he seems to be on his way. So far, no big breakthroughs, but he's really at the beginning. And we'll see what happens. I just want him to be happy. I don't care if he's a butcher or a candlestick maker. I want him to be happy. He's an ethical man. He's a very good man. His mother and I were divorced when he was very young. She was an opera singer, and she was all over the world all the time. And when she wasn't at the Metropolitan Opera,
it was Brenda Boozer, right? Was her
Boozer, yes,
yeah.
And not Elaine Boozler.
No.
She is a comedian. This is Brenda Boozer, now retired, and I don't even know. I really don't see her very much. It was a pretty ugly couple of years of divorce. I was willing to. And it just all kinds of money, crooked lawyers, and with women.
Are you in a relationship now?
Yes, sort of. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Actually, a woman who was in the Metropolitan Opera chorus for 21 years. We just went to see Tosca, the new production.
Oh, is that the one where everybody dropped out? Where, like, there was James Levine had to, well, obviously James Levine had to go, but, like, the tenor had to go, and, you know, they're all replacements?
That's right, and they were very good. I haven't seen, you know, a million Toscas like everyone was talking about, but the sets and lighting were the most beautiful I've ever seen, and I thought that it was a beautiful job. The Levine thing everyone knew about for 30 years, okay?
Yeah.
Just like I didn't know about Harvey. I knew he was a tough guy. I did 2 pictures. One was in a movie with Pacino called People I Know, a very dark movie. And, you know, anyone that worked with Harvey would roll their eyes to the ceiling like, oh, you know, it's Harvey. He's tough. And then Marshall Fine, a longtime film critic, decided to do a documentary about me, the Robert Klein Still Can't Stop His Leg. And he showed them a 5-minute reel we made in Dubai. Harvey and his people were at the festival there, and he loved it. And so he financed it. It's small potatoes to him to make a documentary. I didn't know about the sex thing. You know, I know that he was a tough guy and not a nice guy particularly, but...
Did you know about Louis C.K.?
I had heard about Louis C.K. before that. You know what? I've taken 10,000 pictures with people. I never grabbed a woman's ass while taking a picture, you know?
Well, okay.
I think about my past, and I've spent a lot of years, and I did my share of flirting, and believe me, you can tell if it's not welcome, and you certainly don't touch someone or try to kiss them unless you're invited. But today, men don't get it, even at its most seemingly innocent. When they're...
Well, wait, if it's seemingly innocent, isn't it...
Here's what I mean.
Yeah.
If you are a boss or someone in a superior position, even if you're equals in an office and it's a new person, you don't say to the woman, gee, I like your lipstick, or I like... You know what? You save that till you know them better. Even that is inappropriate. You wouldn't say that to a man.
If he was wearing lipstick, I might.
Equivalent, you know, boy, you're handsome, or boy, you're pretty, you know. So, at its worst, it's a physical assault and rape, which is apparently involved in some of these things. But, for example, I just read Dave Chappelle is an excellent comedian.
Sure.
One of the best. I at least have respect for him and all that. And in the Times this morning, they reviewed one of his new specials in which he doesn't seem to get it either. You know, and he said, why did those girls with Louis C.K. masturbated there? Then they're not going to go into comedy now? He doesn't get it, how that can really not only put you off, but traumatize you. And you know you can't say anything because they're more powerful. So, you know, Cosby was absolutely the monster of them all.
You had heard about Cosby before that other African-American comedian...
I heard about Cosby because I knew one of the women 35, 40 years ago, since she came out anyway. Janice Dickinson was a supermodel.
Right.
But I used to take out her sister, Debbie. And Janice Dickinson, that beastie tried to drug me, but and it stuck in my mind, you know, like he slipped her a pill or something. He did it serially. 35 women volunteered to be on the cover of New York Magazine.
Yeah.
And who knows how many others don't want to be embarrassed. And that's like necrophilia. What is the thrill when someone's unconscious? This guy could have gotten plenty of women.
Right.
You know? So it's just a position of power, and people take advantage of it in every field, whether it's Ford Motor Company and a factory or show business, anything, medical, post office. It's an old thing, and I think this really is a new era. I think that it's not going to eliminate it, but men have got to know better.
Well, let me ask you also, you know, let's, since we talk so much about the Jew thing, there were many years when the Israeli Philharmonic would not play Richard Wagner. And I think it was Leonard Bernstein or maybe Zubin Mehta who said, no, we're gonna change that. We're gonna play Wagner, and it's okay. At this point, a comedy radio station would not play Bill Cosby records or Louis C.K. records. Can you dismiss the art from the action?
Yes. It's necessary. You can choose not to, but Wagner was a terrible anti-Semite.
Yeah.
I love the orchestral parts of it. I couldn't sit through one of the operas, the vocal part, but Walter Gieseking was one of the great pianists of all time, interpreter of Beethoven. He was an out-and-out Nazi, not part of the way. He was all the way. Woody Allen isn't the nicest guy in the world. I don't think he molested a little child, but he did bust up a family and all that, and I know him for many years, and I think he's very much, a selfish guy. I mean, but he happens to be brilliant.
Yeah. But let's say, God forbid.
That's a good question. Can you separate the person who might be less than ideal ethically from their work? And the answer is you can't start. Mel Gibson directed some terrific movies. I think he's an anti-Semitic jerk. But, I mean, when I'm watching the movie and watching it,
But would you not spend money to see the next Mel Gibson movie?
I wouldn't spend money to see any movie. I have my little movie theater.
All right, yeah. But you know what I'm saying.
No. I know. If that, big, the one is about the Scottish warrior is on, it's an incredible movie. It kind of gets you. He has talent. W.C. Fields, one of my favorite, had many flaws. He was against the New Deal. Anyone who was anti-Roosevelt in my house, my father would look at. Roosevelt died when I was 3 years old, but he'd look at Adolph Monju on the screen and say, that anti-Roosevelt best. Politically, well, that's another story, too. Can you separate people's political inclinations today from friendships? Keith Hernandez, who's a great first baseman for the Mets, I just read he's a kind of a friend of mine. We text each other. I coached him a little before he went on. He was on the World Series show, and he hadn't been on that kind of big thing. He's one of the broadcasters for the Mets.
Yeah.
You see, he went to New Year's Eve, Mar-a-Lago. I mean, Jesus.
Can you? Okay, but again, to be politically
pro-Trump, I want to talk to them. I don't,
Well, wait a minute. If
you asked a good question, and it's been talked about many times. Do you separate the?
Sure. But if Donald Trump invited you to play at one of or to one of his dinners that he has for celebrities and comedians,
I wouldn't. I already when he said that Obama was not born.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
That's when I cut him off. I went to the opening of his golf course near my house here in Briarcliff Manor. He was at the LA Film Festival. We took a picture together. He complimented me. I went to a fundraiser at his apartment 20 years ago for a Democrat for who it looked like Vegas. I saw one room, this big foyer. I occasionally would see him, but when I saw him at the opening of this Radio City Music Hall show, and he had already said that about President Obama, I just turned my back. To me, he's a clown. And that was a terrible thing to do. By the way, I want you to know something.
Yeah.
During the Obama, I saw a wonderful conference, I guess it was on BBC, with 3 or 4 top Israeli retired, maybe it was American TV, intelligence and military people, top, Israeli. They said that the cooperation between Israeli and American intelligence and military agencies during the Obama administration was the best it had ever been. So while the two men hated each other, and people might think he was somehow anti-Israel, which he wasn't, believe me, they were very close at the levels that count. So, you don't need friends like Donald Trump and born-again Christians. You do need them for tourism, I guess, but that's about it. What else? Can we talk about why the sky is blue?
Can we? Well, I could never understand. See, you almost went to med school, so you understand physics and biology and chemistry.
Really?
Forget it. Nothing.
Not really.
Yeah.
No, it was the chemistry part and the math part was much too much for me.
We can talk about your hell nights, like the worst nights you've ever had doing stand-up.
Yeah, I mean, I think one was a UJA fundraiser in Palm Beach. Black tie, $10,000 a plate, and I was the entertainment, and a brief speech by the guest speaker, Senator Jacob Javits, who was suffering from Lou Gehrig's disease. He comes on stage with some breathing device trailing him and talk. Like, he barely catches breath. People were in tears. And then they go, and now the comedy of Robert Klein.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, that was about the worst.
Well, I thought you would do some ones like when you were first starting out and there's three people at 2 a.m., But that's pretty bad.
Certainly difficult things, but I was spoiled. I was in a Broadway show, Apple Tree, my first Broadway show I ever auditioned for. Mike Nichols gave me a part, and I'd go down the 44th Street from the Schubert Theater to the Improv, which was the only club of its time. It's only club of its kind at the time, at 44th and 9th. It's no longer there. There is one in L.A. and maybe a couple of others. And it was in the fall of '66, and I went down to do stand-up, and I was an instant hit. And that's where I met this strange dude with a black suit and a red tie. I'll tell you, man, you were fucking brilliant, okay? It was Rodney Dangerfield, born Jacob Cohen, Oyster Bay, Long Island, and the family name was Roy. His father changed the name, so he was Jack Roy, or as his family called him, Jackie. I called him Jack.
Yeah.
Took the name Rodney Dangerfield, and he was my Yale Drama School for stand-up. I was lucky, and then he introduced me to Jack Rollins and Charlie Jaffe.
Your agents.
Managers in the business for comedians. Their names, I think, they used to appear in every Woody Allen movie. They managed Woody Allen and Joan Rivers and Dick Cavett, and then after I joined the office, maybe 2 or 3 years later, in a 2-month time, they took on Letterman, Billy Crystal, and Robin Williams. How's that for a haul? All were unknown, So they did great.
Can I ask you, since you mentioned Rodney Dangerfield, whose style and whose content was obviously very different from yours, but he was, as you said, your Yale Drama School for Comedy. So what did you learn? Since you already were writing your material, you had your way of being. What were things that Rodney Dangerfield told you that you incorporated into your style?
Well, first of all, he wrote his own stuff in those early days, as I have always done, which was unusual then. Very few comedians did. Phil Foster, who played the father on Laverne and Shirley.
Yes.
He was a comedian that wrote his own stuff, too. Most guys had writers, but trimming and toning a joke to make it good, how to hold the mic, how to find out who you're performing for, just general. I followed him around to a lot of gigs, and there's also a story, and I'm too tired to tell it now. I've been talking for an hour. I got to get off soon.
Sure.
I'm very old, but I keep on saying that. But I actually saved his life in Cape Cod. We took out a sailboat. He jumped off for a swim and was in over his head, figuratively and literally. And it's a story I told in my book, The Amorous Busboy of Decatur Avenue, and on one of the HBO specials, which are available in a box set. And the first 8, and then the 9th one is available as a separate DVD published by HBO. I actually almost drowned, and I pulled him in, and it made a funny story, but he was a remarkable person. He really was. I'm very close with his daughter. He wasn't a great parent, but I went to his funeral, and it was Jerry Stiller and Ann Mira
Ouch. Why? Oh, well, I guess she was a money person. Well,
Yes.
okay.
Changed the will and blah, blah, blah. Don't want to go into it, but...
You've gotten to the age where you really don't care. It's sort of like, you'll say bad things. Because most people in showbiz, even if they're in their 30s or their 40s and stuff, they'll say, I don't want to talk about negative people. I want to tell bad stories about people I've worked with because I might work with them again. You're at the point where, I didn't like her. I didn't like him.
Yeah, well, I should write another book, but they always seem to want these juicy stories, and that's what I'm not interested in. Who I stopped, or actually stories about bad experiences with people, almost nil.
Oh, good.
I found you can imagine how many one-nighters I've done, single-night appearances, which was my bread and butter, or clubs, or the 40 feature films, or the 5 TV movies, or the hundreds of television appearances of all kinds. Everyone was great. I think, just like, I don't know, there are nasty people. They weren't nasty with me. I mean, I've seen some misbehavior. I remember Brett Butler. I more or less discovered her in Atlanta, a very smart white woman talking, a southern white woman talking about being abused by her drunken husband and all that. She was very intelligent, and I liked her a lot.
Yeah.
And she was so bad on her show. I did her show twice, Grace Under Fire. I saw her yell at a 70-year-old extra and just curse him out, and I just, it was disgusting, and I told her, too. In fact, one of the kids that played one of her children in the show, her parents removed the child from the show. But she was drug-addled, I think, and not that that's a real excuse, but I can't think of a lot of bad behavior, honestly.
And actually, there's a justice in that, in the sense that when was the last time anybody thought of or heard of Brett Butler in, like, the last 15 years?
Okay.
So sometimes karma,
I was usually reminded that my son's birthday was the day she sobered up and blah, 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 and, it's unfortunate because she was at the top and a very intelligent woman, and she was very nice to me. She brought me little gifts, and but she was not good with other people. But I didn't see much of that. Everyone, when you make a movie, sometimes you have to stay out in the rain or bad weather or freezing weather, or it's like a war without the real danger of a war. It's a team effort, and it's fun. When I look at, I could barely turn on the TV after all these years and not see myself somewhere. I mean, that's how crazy. I did a Twilight Zone, the newer version, the color version.
Right.
One of the best they ever did. Wes Craven directed it,
Oh.
the horror movie guy.
Yeah.
I did disparate things, 6 Ed Sullivan shows. I'm going out to do Will and Grace. I'm going to play Deborah Messing's father again.
Oh, yay. Yay. You played it in a different show last time.
The cop show that was
Right.
canceled last year. And so here I am going to go out. I'm going out in January. I'm going to do 2 episodes and playing her father. So that's fun. And I prefer, there's a whole Hollywood scene here in Brooklyn and Long Island City where you don't have to go to California. But, I'll go out to California a couple of weeks. But no more series in California. I did 2 of them. I refuse to rent another house or relocate. I love my house. I love my little apartment in the city. That's it for me. I don't need the money. I love to work. And
Yeah, I was wondering about that because you still choose to put yourself out there doing stand-up when you have nothing to prove anymore. You have to kind of, almost like Seinfeld is, you just have to do it. Something drives you to keep doing it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's my work. Work is life in a way. I love having time off. Honest to God. I love sitting home. I could smoke a joint. I can have a glass of wine. I watch. I like not having responsibilities. But then I did this show in Canada, New Year's Eve, a big packed house. It was a nightmare coming home. 8 hours at the Toronto airport. They lost my bag. I went to the airport at 1 o'clock, got home in New York at 2 o'clock, got into my house. And that's a nightmare. That's what I hate. I'm fed up with that. I have no interest in going to India or China or anything like that. I have 2 million miles on American Airlines alone. That's only since they started counting. I've had it. I'm not interested in. I love being home, going to the hardware store, asking for a certain nut or a screwdriver or whatever. Anyway, I think we talked on...
Oh, yeah. Well, we've loved having this very particular nut with us in the neighborhood. He's Robert Klein, for gosh sakes. You can find out more about him. Go to his website to make sure that you can get the box set of his DVDs, also get his old CDs and out there and go looking for his older work, as well as seeing him live this coming Friday evening, January 12th, at the Patchogue Theater, which is conveniently located in Patchogue, Long Island. Last question for you, Robert Klein. What do you hope people will remember about you when you're gone?
That I did it right. I did it intelligently. My stuff was smart. It was funny. I was groundbreaking in my own way. And ethical. And, I don't have to say I never assaulted someone. But I was fair.
There's still time.
I was in the position of casting more than once on the other side of the table, and I could feel for the person, male or female, because being an actor and auditioning for something is to be incredibly vulnerable. And that's part of the job, rejection. So, that I did it well, intelligently, and made them laugh. And making people laugh, in my opinion, is a very high calling. It's a wonderful thing that no one doesn't like. There's no scientific evidence that it cures anything, but anecdotally, it's certainly true that you feel better when you're laughing for an extended period of time. You forget your disappointment in your life, or your marriage, or your health, or your children, and you laugh. And your blood pressure may go up while you're laughing, your stomach may hurt, but in the aggregate, you feel better. So what's better? I mean, what could be better? Maybe a brain surgeon, but look at Ben Carson.
Yeah, let's not look at Ben Carson.
No, let's not. Listen,
yes.
Happy New Year to you.
You too. An American Shana Tova to you.
And Shana Tova, and Abrachan Columbus. I don't know, my father used to say that. It means something in Yiddish. I'm not sure what.
I don't know, but it was actually just an honor and a joy to have Robert Klein in the neighborhood. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.